to start with, this recurring theme I have of questions, follow-up questions I wish I had asked the first time,
I
that
like this. I like this segment. This is
I
a good
went,
segment.
yeah, because it always happens afterward. I'm like, oh, I should have asked about this, or
Right.
going through the transcript, I'm like, oh, why didn't I ask this? So
Right.
one of the things that jumped out at me was you had said in our first conversation that you learned a lot from Jerry Seinfeld, and one of the
Oh yeah.
examples you gave was, go into the writing pad every single day and just,
Yeah.
making that a habit. And I was curious because, it's not often that a musician will cite a comedian as someone that they've learned from. And I'm
Right.
curious, besides the daily writing habit, what other stuff maybe did you learn from Seinfeld?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question because I um, am not necessarily the best sort of public speaker. You give me a microphone and you give me a song to sing, and I can do that. But the space in between the songs uh, is not necessarily my forte. So I found, particularly with Seinfeld, um, listening to him talk about his craft and the way the things he needs to do to propel his craft forward, keep his craft moving forward. I liked the way he talked. I liked the cadence of how he sort of would explain things. The obviously he's hilarious,
Mm-hmm.
but I found there was just sort of a way that he described the art of comedy, art of stand-up comedy, that I felt there were through lines to what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And look, learning from the greats, like we should all be learning from the greats, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there are many, in any field, when someone truly excels, there are ways that people in all of the other fields, or certainly many, many, many of the other fields out there, can benefit by studying what they've done. Um, and so I feel like on some levels, I have urged myself to slow down a little bit, not just run off at the mouth and say exactly whatever it is that came to my mind in that moment. But also, I, I struggled, I wouldn't say greatly, but really struggled with learning how to be a front man for our band. If you go back to, and I do not encourage it, but if you go back and look at some of the earlier videos of us playing live, um, you'll see me as very much a work in progress. And I sort of was trying to be the sort of tough guy, rah, rock and roll, expletive, expletive, expletive. Um, and it's not really who I, it's not really, it's not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And listening to, someone like Jerry talk about his craft, um, it kind of encouraged me within my own sort of, much smaller, but to me equally important, if not more important, little world, um, to just sort of be more myself and be comfortable in my own skin, and also be confident that I can engage with people, with an audience, by more or less just being an authentic version of myself. I don't need to be trying on a character when I walk on stage. I don't have to be putting on a costume when I walk on stage. It's actually much, much better for me to just walk myself on stage,
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But it was a pretty big revelation. And but at the same time, I need to also give credit to Geddy Lee from Rush, because what I realized sort of as I was studying some of these people in other fields was that it was kind of right there in front of me the whole time. Like, Rush is my favorite band, and those guys were always hyper authentic to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Like they weren't trying to be anything that they weren't. And when you would hear Getty talk on the microphone, um, although he, traditionally didn't really dive into sort of maybe the stories behind the songs or those types of things
Right.
during their live shows, but you didn't feel like you were watching a caricature of somebody. Whereas some of the other frontmen who were amazing, and the first concert I ever went to was Van Halen, and
Uh,
on the Diver Down tour. David Lee Roth, one of the all-time great frontmen ever, right? He's also, I guess, now as I look back on it, he's being pretty authentic to himself. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
he's actually not really being any different than he would be backstage or off stage. But my perception at the time was, okay, he's become larger than life as he walks on stage. So, long answer to a very, very short question. The Seinfeld thing, and I encourage people, like, I think I think he's a really, really wise guy. The stuff about transcendental meditation and the importance that holds for him in his life. And I'm sort of dancing with meditation, sort of like loosely, sort of romancing it in my life, trying to see, hey, where can this fit in for me? But I can see all the ways that he's really been conscious and um, purposeful to try to live a better life, and do better stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Now there's two thoughts I had off of that one. The first is, do you know a comedian slash actor named Kevin Pollak?
yeah, of course, sure,
Okay, so he had a great interview recently, and because he came up in the stand up world as well,
right.
and like one of his pet peeves is like meeting people at a party and some find out what he does, and someone says, "Oh yeah, I dabble in comedy." Because he's like, well, no, he's like, because you never hear anyone say, yeah, I dabble in dentistry.
That's
It's like,
amazing. Oh, that's wonderful.
this
Yeah.
is my craft. This is,
Yeah.
and he's, and they put in the time, and they studied
Oh,
and they
yeah.
worked and developed to make it look easy.
Oh,
Um, and it does look like it's conversational when it's done correctly.
yeah.
But that's also the thing about stand up is you can see someone that makes it look easy, but inevitably there's an opening act that makes it look really hard and reminds you this is not easy.
One of my dear friends out here in California. Well, one of my dear friends who happens to live out here in California. His name is Mike Falzone, and he's a
Hmm.
stand-up comedian, and he's a very, very funny human being. He's very good at his craft. He also happens to be a really, really, really sweet guy. And I've gone to his shows here in the LA area. And he's said, sometimes, like, "Hey man, we got to get you up there, got to get you up there, because you really appreciate it." And he'll say to me, "You're a funny guy,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not. I'm not a funny guy. I'm not. And so, how dare you, Mike Falzone? Because I know what you're doing. You're going to get, and no. So my answer to him was always, no. You're absolutely crazy. It's like that. No, I don't want to. I never could. And I'm really just happy to be kind of sitting back here watching you be a virtuoso up there.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that people think it's easier than it probably is, and I don't know, because I've never taken that step, and nor will I. It's just not in my
Right.
DNA. But yeah, you see these guys who are just killers up there, you know, laugh, 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 laugh,
Yeah.
laugh, and it just happens naturally, organically, and they're taking you on a journey, and one of the things that Mike does that I think is also, it's a different skill set, because it's not a routine on these shows, but he does these crowd work shows,
Mm,
where he's just up there talking to people, and in the moment things just come out of his head, and that's
yeah,
like
that's
that's
amazing.
like that's like jazz improv at the highest level, right?
Right.
He's got nothing, and now he's got something, and
Hmm.
so anyways, I have so much respect for comedians, and I do try to learn from them and sort of take those lessons and see how they can be applied to what we do in a musical context.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other thought I had, and it's an issue I keep bringing up with people over the past week, because I just so happen I've been to like a few shows
Mhm.
over the last 7 days, and it was interesting because there was one act, and I'm not going to name names. There, a well-known rock band, and
Vertical
um,
Horizon.
no, 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 um, they and they were tight, like they played really great and they had the lights and everything. But it comes down to the whole idea of like volume does not equal engagement. And their lead guy, he looked the part and he acted the part,
Sure.
but they were just kind of okay. They were a little dull in a way, in that it didn't really draw you in.
Mhm.
You know, like I thought you did really well when you were opening for Toad and Gin Blossoms, about establishing that rapport. And also, the same venue I saw you at this past Saturday, saw the band Crowded House.
Mhm.
And I'd never seen them before, and they were fantastic. And again,
Oh yeah.
a wonderful example of volume does not equal engagement, because they're
Yeah.
a much more mellow sound, but also those guys were fantastic at making the audience feel comfortable.
Right.
They made fun of themselves constantly, and they just kind of
Right.
talked and told stories. And
Yeah.
but there no strutting, nothing
Mhm.
special. No, they didn't try and be Diamond Dave, because only he can be Diamond Dave.
Mhm.
And but it really drew you in, and it was
Right.
kind of a fascinating study.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
not that there's anything against the strutting, because you have people like Freddie Mercury, one of the great frontmen of all time,
Oh yeah.
that just like, holy cow, this is
Yeah.
amazing. But I still think you can, as it said, you can find who you are, and the more natural you are, the more you're
Right.
likely to have that rapport.
Well, look, if you walk out on stage and you are blessed to the degree that Freddie Mercury was blessed to just be himself and walk on a stage and command 100,000 people effortlessly with any
Hmm.
little gesture that he would choose to make, then there you are, being the best and most authentic version of yourself. And for me, uh, uh, again, in my much different little world, I just want to be authentically myself. and
Hmm.
and that was a great lesson to learn, for us. I think one of the main, uh you know one of the I'd say the real tone that we want to set when we start a show is that we're in this together, right? We're here with you, the audience. The audience, you are here with us, and we're going to start this energy cycle that starts going like this. We push out from the stage, you push back into us, and it just, what winds up happening is we get this energy that just lifts us all up throughout the whole night. And even in playing a sad song, I think we can all feel closer together and therefore lift it up.
Hmm.
So I joke sometimes that most of my songs are kind of bittersweet, but I hope that we don't leave the evening feeling kind of down. I want us to leave. Ideally, we would leave feeling kind of lifted up, or or feel like, hey, yeah, that someone else feels the way that I feel and have felt.
Yeah.
And I sang, like singing together as a group is just such a beautiful communal experience. And I do believe that it is a therapeutic, cathartic experience. And I don't know, obviously I sing a fair bit, but like when you play a show and you encourage people to sing at the show, some of those people may not have sung,
No.
use their voice to sing uh, in weeks, months, who knows? And there's a beauty to that. Hey, just sing. It can be a very positive and beneficial experience. And so that I come from it from the perspective, and my bandmates come to it from the perspective of let's all try to lift each other up here,
Hmm.
and walk a little taller when we leave this show.
Yeah. And building off of that, um, in our first conversation, you had talked about you you love Richard Marx like a brother, but you absolutely hate him because he makes things easy or
Oh,
look
he's the
easy.
worst.
Again,
He's
um,
the total worst. He's just the
right.
worst.
Um, but I went and I saw it was not professionally done. It was someone holding a phone, but it was a
Uh,
performance from this year with you and Richard on stage, both singing "Everything You Want," kind of acoustically.
yeah.
Which number one, I thought was really cool, and two, I'm really interested in for a singer that you respect so much, and for him to take on your song, if that's the correct term.
Sure.
I'm curious what you noticed about the song and what he brought to it, because you have this whole different perspective on a song that well. But
Right.
here's a very experienced singer who, clearly loved the song, but maybe he's pulling different pieces out of it.
So it's a really interesting question. I think the feeling I get when I walk on stage with Richard is I would imagine what other basketball players felt like during the Michael Jordan era when they would walk on the court, or let's say with the other players on the Chicago Bulls felt like when they were walking on the court with Michael Jordan. It's like, okay, well, we need to do the best we can because this guy. And Richard is, just effortlessly one of the best.
Hmm.
So the kind of beautiful thing about what he does and the way he does it, from my perspective, is he is his live delivery is more or less perfect, more or less 100% of the time, maybe 99.9999999% if I'm being really critical.
Hmm.
Um, so, and I am not a natural singer. It's something I have to work, and that's why I joke. I joke and say that I hate him because he just walks right on stage and sings perfectly, and I will have been backstage for the last 45 minutes doing la 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 and all that nonsense that I have to do to get this thing going, right? So on the one hand, it's perfect from a note and performance standpoint, but it's also as someone who's singing with him, the emotions that I feel as a singer and the emotions that I've sort of, because now we're talking about Richard and me singing one of my songs. So
Right.
my experience being on stage with him is I'm sort of cycling through the emotions that I had when I was writing it, and as a result am having now singing it. And what I feel, which is pretty special from him, that I don't feel very often, and may not really have felt too much at all in my career, is this guy next to me is having the same feelings that I'm having. So
Mm.
it's not just about the notes that are being sung. It's not just about the words that are being said. It's about the feeling that created the need to write the song in the first place. When I'm closing my eyes and singing with him, I'm feeling this person next to me. It's almost like our hearts are in the same place, and our voices and our guitars. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's just so next level,
Mm.
He's just, it's wonderful for me. I love it so much. It's like, when you're young and if you're learning how to play tennis and you're playing tennis against somebody who's pretty bad, you're, you know, if you're lucky enough to get the ball over the net, the ball hit, doesn't come back to you, right? But
Right.
if you're playing with someone who's really, really, really good, well, you're doing the best you can, and you might start getting the ball over the net, and it may be clumsy, and it may be this, and it may be that, but the ball's going to come right back to you, and you're going to get the chance to do it again and again and again. So it's great to play with people who are much better than you, and I
Yeah.
feel like that when I walk on stage with Richard. Now, certainly, I have my 10,000 hours. I'm confident up there on the stage, and I'm not trying to sort of diminish. What it is that I do, that I feel I can do at this point fairly well. But it is a sight to behold, and an experience, certainly a deeply felt experience from my perspective, to be on stage with someone at that level, who has taken, in this case, my song literally into his heart, and he's emoting that song with me.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. And then staying with that song, and because the general theme is the 25th anniversary of the album, um, I know you said that. I think it was you said that you thought "You're a God" was a better song than you were capable of, or
No,
better,
best I ever had.
best I ever had. Okay,
Best I ever had. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay, but I contend that one of the best lyrics I've I'll put it down as one of the best ever crafted was the "Listen and wait for the echoes of angels that won't return," which I thought
Oh,
is
thanks.
a fantastic turn of phrase, and I'm wondering
Thank
if you
you.
can relate how that came about.
Yeah. So, when I think back to that time in my life, and the experience of writing that song, the sort of how my sort of heart was feeling. Um, there was so much uncertainty. There was so much desperation. There was this unrequited love that was viewed as friendship from the other side. Um, and what I was really trying to grapple with was all the beautiful things that I could see for us, that we could have had if things had been a little different. And
Mm,
all those beautiful vistas that I could see being just so naturally ours were disappearing and becoming gray and disappearing into the mist.
mm, mm,
And that's how I was feeling. But I also knew that she had all these dreams of meeting Mr. Right, whatever you want to call that, right? Um, she had these hopes that someone would come in and sweep her off her feet, whatever that is.
yeah.
And some of her dreams of what that could possibly have been were turning into much more sort of somber and harsh realities. And I feel like, so that first that sort of the first two verses are kind of talking sort of from both perspectives, on the one hand from how I was feeling, but also how she was feeling, how I perceived her to be feeling.
Yeah, yeah. And but I mean, just the idea that that imagery just popped into your head, because I mean, or was it something that you
Yeah.
kind of slaved over? Like, all right, how do I
No.
express this concisely?
No, that line just came to me. I remember that came that
Mm,
that line was just there, and um it was just a thing. It was a feeling that became those words. Then I don't believe, I mean, I do have the original lyric sheet. Uh, it'd be interesting to look at it again and see, but I would bet you there are no crossing outs or,
yeah,
circles with lines drawn to it. Try it this way. It's not the echoes of giraffes
right,
that
yeah,
return. Don't giraffe. It wasn't giraffes. I don't think we'll find that it was giraffes.
right,
No, I think it was. I think it was just there, and
yeah,
it was also nice in the last verse to um, switch it around a little bit and have it be anger of angels. I remember that
yeah.
that was that I think that took a little bit longer to find how to do that. Almost, that that there was a sense that something that was natural and beautiful uh, had been forfeited,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a little there was some um, what there were consequences
Yeah,
to you know what I mean. There was some pain there.
right. And yeah, and I'm also wondering if it's not just because you guys have been at it for a while by the time this album came out, and thus you had experience under your belt, and you'd kind of been conditioning your mind to create lyrics and put these
Yeah,
connections together. Because I sometimes, you
sure.
know, one of the reasons this interview happened is because of my work with Sister Hazel, and I was talking with Ken, who he wrote one of the great songs before they even had the band, All For You. But I still contend, and I told him, I said one of my favorite lyrics he's ever written was from the Chasing Daylight album, and it's from the song "Your Mistake," where he says, "I want to be rain that tastes like wine," which
Mm,
you know is
right.
fabulous and could
It's
mean
great.
so many different things,
Yeah,
and
it's great. That's great.
and as good as he was when he started, I don't know if he could have written that line when they were
Right.
just starting out. It's like it had to be that whole experience that led up to him creating amazing lines like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really important and valid point too, because I, well, speaking for myself, I am a much different person now than I was back then, and I'm happy with where I am right now, and I'm, uh, uh, I'm not looking back pining for yesterday. I'm sort of like, yeah, no, let's stay here. And part of that may just be the wisdom of my 50s. Um, but I completely agree with you. That perspective, when I look back at myself at that time, there was so much desperation and angst and uncertainty. And to be completely fair, there is still a heck of a lot of angst and despair and uncertainty. Okay. So, like, I just think that I'm a little bit more capable of dealing with it. And, and there's that whole old adage of whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I feel like at this point, just by virtue of, rinse and repeat day after day, we're doing this crazy thing, um, you know, called life. Like, okay, all right, here I've dealt with this type of thing before. But I also, to the point of lyric writing, I think I was very lucky as a songwriter to have had the Everything You Want record be the record that was going to get the big push from the major label. Because I wasn't really, I don't believe, ready until then. And if it had been a younger, or a less competent version of myself as a writer, who, maybe, not if I had been someone who hadn't maybe been really trying to refine the craft, hone the craft,
Mhm.
and then we got the big shot. Um, I don't know, but I'm not confident that I would look back as fondly. I imagine that I wouldn't look back as fondly on that record as I do on Everything You Want. And and so on some levels, it feels to me like I'm not that different now as a lyricist as I was then. But the records that came before that, I feel that was a it was a significantly different experience. Writing songs and that's really what it is. It's not about, hey, as a listener, does someone hear what I'm saying, agree with what I'm saying, or any of that. It's just me. Like, I was there, I was writing those songs, and it was a different experience. And maybe it is that, once you get your 10,000 hours, you've 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 learned how to do this thing, right?
Yeah.
Now, it continually changes. And collaborative songwriting, for example, was something that I was really not comfortable with. And when Richard Marx and I became friends, he said, "Hey, you want to write a song?" And I was basically like, "No, I don't." And it was out of fear, and it was out of a lack of confidence that I could get in a room and do this thing that I do, because I up until then, it was a largely, like, the vast majority of the songs that I had written were completely introspective. I would be alone in a room when I
Mhm.
by definition, I would be alone in a room writing the song. So to have someone else in there was scary. To have someone at his level was petrifying. And to think about what he would have thought of me if I had done a bad job was
Mhm.
unacceptable. So it was like, no, I don't. But over time, I learned. So again, like, I have been learning over time how to do different aspects of this craft, and I've still got so far to go.
Mhm.
But I do know, if I sit down in a room with someone, I can do this. I can do this thing. And it's no less it's no less of a kick now than it was back then, to, like, get a phrase, get a rhyme, get a feeling, these are magical little things that sort of you're sort of pulling unwittingly out of the ether, and you're
Yeah.
trying to kind of, like, harness and refine and hone and turn into a little sort of being, its own little being. And that's just special. That's magic.
Right. And you put yourself in that uncomfortable situation more than once, as one of the few people that's ever co-written a song with Neil Peart,
Yes. Yeah.
which who like Richard, is considered a fantastic lyricist.
Oh,
You
oh
know,
my
and
gosh.
so, like,
Can I just say, sorry to interrupt you?
no, no, go ahead.
I'm sorry. If people somehow are not familiar with Rush, uh, but specifically Neil's lyrics, go listen to Subdivisions from the Signals record, and maybe even maybe even don't listen to the song first. Maybe look up the lyrics and read the lyrics. It's astoundingly great. Like I have chills. It's so great. And
Mm-hmm.
he just he did that. He created those words. Oh, unbelievable. But yes,
Yeah.
I had the
No, yeah, you
incredible
could go
privilege.
through the whole, or even obscure stuff that never got radio play. There, one of my favorite lines of his, on the Counterparts album, there's a song called "Cold Fire,"
Mm,
um, and there's a line in there that says, "The flame at the heart of a pawnbroker's diamond is a cold fire," and I'm like,
hmm.
"Holy
Yeah.
crap, that's good."
Yeah. Oh yeah, no. I mean, yeah. He's up in that. He's in the Mount Olympus.
Right. So, what did you take away from that experience?
Well, funnily enough, not much from a lyric writing perspective, and I say this really just like as a joke, because Neil, when we wrote a song called "Even Now" for
Mm-hmm.
the Burning the Days record, and when when we had our session, uh, he had told me that he had a title, and the concept, the title was "Even Now," and the concept was, you still think about me after all this time. You did this. There's still some uncertainty for you after all this time. Well, then I guess we're even now.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was like, oh, what a play on words. Boy, that's a
Right.
great idea. I can't wait to sink my teeth into this lyrically. I mean, I might, I'm no Neil Peart, but man, boy, let's
Yeah.
write those lyrics. Let's write this song. And he comes over to, he comes over to the studio and he opens up this folder. He sits down and I was like, so you ready? And he's like, yeah, you ready? Or maybe he said, so you ready? And I was like, yeah, I'm ready. Opens up, pulls out a piece of paper that's like, the heaviest stock
Yeah.
with,
Right.
it's all printed out like he had it printed at the world's finest print shop with different fonts and
Gold
like,
leaf and
yeah, gold leaf. Yeah, yes. And sort of places it down on the desk in front of me, and he says, tell me what you think. And even now, and the lyrics, it's the
yeah.
title, and then the lyrics, and I'm looking down at it, and it's like, I mean, that's okay. So those are those are amazing. That's the lyrics are they're done. They're done. They're done. And so like that part of me that was like hungry to jump in was all of a sudden like, okay, okay, what can I do? And so it was a very much a sort of bob and weave moment where, excuse me, I realized that I really, and it's not surprising, right? Because that's how he functioned within the context of Rush. Like
Mm-hmm.
he would provide a bunch of lyrics. They would sort of go through them, make some little edits here and there. Or I know Getty, as he was singing, would sometimes say like, "Hey, these words are a little rough." As for me as a singer, is it can we find something else that would work? Or maybe this, I feel like this is the chorus and this is the verse as opposed to the way you had it, et cetera, et cetera. I know there was a lot of work that was done by all parties within the incredible, amazing
Yeah.
framework of that band. But within the context of me as a songwriter sitting down with one of my great heroes and subsequently one of my absolute best friends ever, um, I, like half my
Yeah.
job, which is really like what kind of I was like, I'm done. You don't need me. And so I thought, okay, cool. And I picked up an acoustic guitar and I just started playing as I was reading the words. I just started playing the guitar, and fortunately I was recording as I did it, and And then I just started singing, and I started singing, as it went down, and more or less, I mean, more than less, I wrote the music and the melody for it instantaneously as I read the lyrics down.
Mm.
And
Wow.
Neil, and when I was sort of done, Neil said, is that something that you've been working on? And I was like, no, I don't know what that was.
Yeah.
Um, and but that's the real beauty, coming back to the daily rituals, which, there are times when I'm better about my daily rituals, and there are times when I'm not as on my daily rituals, and I don't want to paint myself as someone who's really got it all figured out, because I don't. But I
Mm-hmm.
but I do know that when you are more connected to the muse, and more disciplined in your relationship with the creative process, then things come to you a little bit more easily. It's a muscle that you are keeping finely toned, and so that moment was plausibly more um, uh, easily achieved, because I was kind of ready for it. And
Mm-hmm.
but it was this really beautiful, thing. It was also kind of funny, because I didn't have a chance to really um, the only words that really come to mind are expletives, like
Which is fine.
well, no, but like freak out. Okay, you
Yeah.
know,
Right.
Neil's here. I'm here. I'm the. Let me paint it this way. We decide we're going to write a song. Neil sits down next to me. No instrument in his hand, no words, just a title. And I'm sitting down with my acoustic guitar, and okay, now let's try to do this.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many worlds where that is an absolute disaster. And for me, as someone who really admired him, um, is too small a word.
Mm-hmm.
So I admired him, and yet even by that time, I also loved him as a friend, right? So there's a lot of big emotions there, and like it could so easily have been um, just an absolute disaster, and it could impact the friendship, because
Mm.
then he's worried, like he doesn't like it, he doesn't think we did a good job, whatever. Ah, man, hey, you know what? I don't think you should put that song on that record. I'm kind of not there with it, right? I mean,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
which would have been his absolute right and duty as someone who was in charge
Yeah.
of his artistic output. Like, hey, man, I don't like that song. I don't think it's very good, and I don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Right. So, anyways, I miss him so much. I miss him so
Hmm.
much. He's what a man. What a man.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting that you've said this once before about, you try and be in the present, but the, you know, you've been doing all of these interviews in celebration of the 25th anniversary. So I'm wondering, what has this look back? How might that have be influencing what you're going to be doing going forward?
That's an interesting question. The short answer is it's not.
Okay.
I don't. I The past is the past. The future is the future. The one thing I will say that has been lovely is I feel like it's like I'm seeing some family friends that I haven't seen in a long time. And it's nice to
Mm-hmm.
kind of reconnect with some of the songs on that record that we haven't played in ages and ages. And I love those songs. I love them like family. Um, but it does not impact me in terms of what I want to be doing moving forward. And that's a nice feeling, because I think if it was, there are so many ways that that could be different.
Hmm.
And I could be kind of sitting here going, well, geez, if I could only write another Everything You Want. Like, you can't write another Everything You Want. You need to write another new song. You
Yeah.
need to do something new that you haven't done before. And it doesn't matter. Well, okay, because of Everything You Want and the success that it had, I now, still this many years later, am not freaking out and scared to death, and feeling the need to do something that's not genuine and authentic within me, to try to make something that is going to make money or
Right.
give us success. All these other considerations that I just, I don't have them. They're not
Yeah.
there. And that's really just, that's because that's the gift that the songs from that record have given me, which are, I mean, you can't even conceive it. I mean, I cannot even believe the the sort of luck is the first word, but good fortune, the you know, and the gratitude that I feel towards this music from towards Everything You Want is, um, I can't, I really can't put it into words, because everything, everything about my life changed, and
Mm.
mostly for the better.
Yeah.